Morning, everyone. Kamala Harris has been picked as the VP pick for Joe Biden for the Democratic side. And in 2016, she was reported by Business Insider as being, well, California's Kamala Harris becomes first Indian American U.S. Senator. 2019, Kamala Harris, Biden picks Kamala Harris as running mate, first black woman. I mean, you know, the media. It is what it is. Here is Kamala Harris, attacking Joe Biden's record on busing and working with segregationists in vicious exchange at Democratic debate. And the vicious exchange is not all that vicious. You can watch it if you want to. Links in the description. And here's Sean King. And there's a lot of people making fun of people who would say they could never support Harris and who are now kind of reversing that stance. So here's Sean King for one example. He says, "I'll be frank," and this is, when was this? November 14th, 2018. "I'll be frank and tell you two Democrats that I am 99% sure I won't be supporting, primarily because of their dismal history on criminal justice reform over the course of their entire careers, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. They both helped build and advanced mass incarceration." Right, and then fast forward to, I'll move me over here. Weird Twitter. You'd think they could. Anyway, whatever. Sean King says, on August 11th, "That's it for me. I'm incredibly proud to see a brilliant black woman and HBCU grad chosen as vice presidential nominee. I've done political work my whole life. It's rarely things dreams are made of. Kamala Harris is the most progressive VP nominee in American history." Whew. I mean, you know, full-throated endorsement, right? Right after saying you could never support them. On to Canadian politics, and I'm talking about Biden's VP pick because I think things are going to get more interesting. Already yesterday, there was a Trump team response to the pick with a campaign-style ad against Harris, and other interesting movements on other interesting places, right? Government, Department of Justice, unsealed indictments, whatever. So very interesting to watch. We'll see how this all plays out. I have no idea how it's going to play out. I have no idea. It seems like something should probably happen before the election, right? I think so. Anyway, moving into Canadian politics. This is Charlie Angus, and he's an NDP MP in the federal House of Commons, and he says that you are Craig Kielburger's all-access pass to Bardiche Chegger, and Pierre Poilievre, and this is the one we're going to watch, but links in the description if you want to watch the rest. Pierre Poilievre says, "Did anybody ever tell we to stop because the Prime Minister had pushed back on this?" And of course, Chegger doesn't actually answer the question, but we're going to listen to Mr. Poilievre's question, and then we'll move on. Here we go.
Here, you were aware that the Prime Minister withdrew your proposal from the Cabinet meeting on May the 8th, yes or no?
The Prime Minister testified and shared that information.
And the WE organization had already begun implementing the Canada Summer Student Service Grant on the 5th, 3 days earlier. So did you instruct anybody to immediately call WE and say, "Stop, the Prime Minister has pushed back and that this program is not approved by Cabinet, and therefore WE has got to put its actions on hold"? Yes or no?
Madam Chair, the Prime Minister, as he stated, actually, it was about due diligence from officials, so I would like the Deputy to have.
So she doesn't answer the question or refers to her deputy or whatever. Now, I haven't had time to go through the full, there were Schugert, Quattro, and Chegger who testified yesterday. That's a lot of material, and I had other things to do. And today, I'm early today because I have to go out. We're going out for a family vacation-y thing, so it should be fun, but I wanted to get this done before I went out. So I haven't had time, and I'm not sure I'm going to have time to go through it the way I normally would. So I apologize, but these are the things we suffer. Okay, Pierre Poilievre says, "Minister Chegger confirms that WE has not returned the money it got for the canceled program." Well, isn't that interesting? They said, "Oh yeah, we're gonna return everything." Now I don't know how much. I know some of it has been returned, I think, as far as I understood, but from this tweet, it sounds like none of it has been returned, while I was under the impression, and it could be mistaken, that they had returned all but like $8 million or something like that. I thought they had returned all of it, but again, I could be mistaken. I'm sure I read that in the paper, though, that they'd returned all but a fraction of it. So again, I'm going to have to look into this, but that's interesting that Mr. Poilievre's putting that tweet out there, because I'm Like I said, I thought that they had reported they had returned it. Here's Brian Lilley, and he says, if the Commons Ethics Committee can ever get going again, tech problems for the second day. I'd like someone to ask Shugart this, why the PM cited potential conflict as a reason to pull WE from the cabinet on May 8th, when Shugart testified that the conflict of interest was never raised. And he did. We'll get to that. There's a CBC article about that, which we're going to look at now. How can the clerk at once confirm that the due diligence was done sufficiently, but say he has no direct knowledge as to what was done? Canada's top public servant says agreement with We Charity was typical. Yeah, no reason, no red flags, which is exactly what he says. Okay, here's that article, CBC reporting. Government dropped the ball on We Charity deal, Quattro says. Now, they dedicate the first 2 paragraphs to giving the minister the chance to set the tone of the article. Here's what she does with it. Employment Minister Carla Quattro conceded the government, quote, dropped the ball on its student volunteer grant program, and said she makes no excuses or justification for Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and Finance Minister Bill Morneau's role in the resulting We Charity controversy. So that's saying, yeah, we made a mistake, and there are people who are responsible, and it's those two. Speaking in the House of Commons, back to this Ethics Committee Tuesday, Qualtrough said that in the rush to help Canadians in a time of crisis, the government hurried programs with the understanding some mistakes would be made. She said she hopes the controversy engulfing the Liberal government won't distract from the good work done to support Canadians. And she goes back to this a bunch. Here's another one. She says, it's an unfortunate situation, says Quattro. I don't think it in any way takes away from the other really important and, I would say, fantastic work that we've done for students or for Canadians writ large. Could you explain why you chose not to fund the student government jobs program and instead told them to pound sand while you allowed $900 million to be funneled to WE and not rolled out to anybody except a couple of students maybe out in Nova Scotia? Or was it New Brunswick? I can't remember exactly. But that doesn't make sense. You haven't done any good work, great work, fantastic work. No. But the article, again, the CBC article focuses on the fantastic work, and we really meant well. And this top paragraph here is meant to show you their belly. Oh man, sorry about that. We made a mistake. Shucks, Oh, we really meant well, and that's supposed to protect them. Like this is not a we meant well mistake. This is $1 billion of money going to a charity with very little oversight, and that's a problem. That's not something to say, oh, well, we meant really well. We were going to do some great work. Yeah, I think it would have been an absolute disaster. The fact that it was a disaster before it even got off the ground is indicative of how big of a disaster it would have been had they got a bunch of students, 100,000 students, working for 5,000 hours somehow this summer online. Like, just the logistics of it. If you look at any other volunteer program through history, getting that number of people involved and for that much engagement, that many hours, I mean, it's 12.5 weeks, I believe, the last time I did the math. 5,000 hours divided by 40 hours a week is 12.5 weeks, I believe. And that's a lot of work. Like, that's a lot of work. How many weeks in summer? Like, my goodness, 40 hours of online trolling for $10 an hour? Back to this article, okay. Quote, we knew from the start things would not be perfect and we were prepared to have to course correct when we needed. How would you course correct when you've given the money to a charity that doesn't have oversight? Like that you don't have oversight of? You can call them up and be like, hey guys, we think we should do this. Okay, yeah, all right. Seriously. And they're outsourcing because they're unilingual. They're single lingual. They only speak English. Yeah, they're the only thing in the entire country that could possibly deliver, but they can't deliver to Quebec. So, but it's the only thing that could deliver in the entire country. Ridiculous. Stupid. Lazy. It's lazy propaganda. Okay, back to this. Earlier in the day, Canada's top bureaucrat told the committee the agreement that with We Charity was typical and wouldn't have gone through the routine checks and balances. Clerk of the Privy Council, Ian Shugart, said officials with Employment and Social Development Canada were in charge of the file and that he saw no red flags that warranted giving special advice to Trudeau. All I can say is that the contribution agreement in this case was typical of a relationship between a government department and an entity guided by the principles of audit and due diligence with respect to interests of the Crown, he said. This contribution agreement will bear scrutiny as typical of the mechanisms that have been approved by the Treasury Board and have been used in the government for a very, very long time. In 2017, Justin Trudeau repealed the ability to audit charities. So yeah, very long time. We just gamed the system a little bit a couple of years ago. Okay, back to this. Trudeau and his government have been under fire for awarding We Charity the deal to manage the program, despite the ties between the charity and members of Trudeau's family. We Charity subsequently withdrew from the agreement due to controversy. Yeah, they ran screaming from that as soon as anybody started lifting up the curtains on it and said, "Do you know their parents own a whole lot of real estate through numbered companies?" They were like, "Oh my goodness, you could find that? We're out." Okay, back to this. Trudeau has maintained that despite the fact his wife, mother, and brother had received payments from We, he did not place himself in a conflict of interest by taking part in cabinet talks about the program. He did, however, apologize for failing to recuse himself from those discussions. So he didn't put himself in a conflict of interest, but he's sorry that he didn't recuse himself. Okay. We Charity was selected to run the program and did not go through a competitive bidding process. Trudeau has maintained that senior government officials said the charity was the only organization able to deliver the program. He said he was surprised to see the agreement on the cabinet agenda on May 8th and that he asked for more due diligence to ensure We was the best organization to deliver the program. And he asked in French, so everybody looked at him blankly and then outsourced the translation. Shugart said he was generally aware, and that there was a desire for due diligence by the Prime Minister and his Chief of Staff, Katie Telford, but left that work to the officials handling the program. Quote, "I was not personally involved in that due diligence. My opinion was not sought, and I did not see anything at the time that required my giving the Prime Minister specific advice." That was Shugart. That's what he said. Due diligence sufficient. Shugart said he believes due diligence was sufficient, but conceded that closer scrutiny could have been done and that lessons have been learned. We learned lessons. We could have looked at it closer. Quote, "I think knowing in retrospect what we know now, we probably would have inquired further. But I must say that even looking back now, I have no evidence that the We organization, had the program gone ahead, would not be able to deliver the program as set out in our contribution agreement," he said. Again, I say they're unilingual. They speak one language, and Canada is bilingual. They have French requirement. So how is this the only organization in Canada that could deliver this? How is there no problem with this at all? Nobody sees an issue with this? Evidently not. Clarifying, I scroll down. This is into Chagger now. Clarifying Chagger's earlier statement that she had any conversations with We about the student volunteer program. Chagger said she spoke at a We Day event and also spoke with We Charity co-founder Craig Kielburger on April 17th. She said the conversation focused on a separate youth entrepreneur initiative, which Kielburger was proposing, not the student volunteer program. Opposition MPs have asked why Chagger didn't report what could be considered a lobbying effort by Kielburger. She told the committee on Tuesday it was not her responsibility to determine if someone has registered as a lobbyist. It is the responsibility of lobbyists to report their lobbying activities, she said. She said she did not intend to pursue the unsolicited proposal for the entrepreneurship program. Trudeau announced the broad strokes of the plan for the student volunteer program on April 22nd, and Chagger said she was not advised of that announcement ahead of time. So, and I think that's it for this article. So it's interesting how everybody's just, not aware and unsolicited contracts and, I spoke to them on the 17th, but it wasn't about that. It was about this other thing. It just, like, all of these crises, all of these half answers, all of these half-baked, maybe plausible explanations for why Trudeau and liberal-connected entities continually get all these plum contracts without any kind of bidding process and without much oversight. And when the clerk of the Privy Council says, there's lots of oversight that's been used by a government for a long time, it's interesting to me that he doesn't describe what that oversight looks like. Because it seems to me that the oversight that we would have had this gone forward would have been very, very little. It would have been not a whole lot of ability to do much, really. Like, they were going to deliver the program as written, and if we being the Canadian public wanted changes or to stop it or whatever, I don't think that would be listened to. And if the government came in and said, we want you to do this and this and this, I don't know how much they'd have leverage to do anything about it either, right? So I don't know. Here's Brian Lilley, and he says, the appearance of two cabinet ministers in Canada's top civil servant was a disaster for the Trudeau Liberals as they try to shake the We scandal. Read and retweet my latest, and here it is. Interesting. Trudeau's We debacle will be the focus of a rare summer sitting of the House of Commons today, but the PM will not be there. Yeah, this is one of the two sittings of the House in August, right before back to normal in September, maybe. Ontario had, 33 cases yesterday of COVID-19, 33 new cases. I don't think any deaths. Very interesting. Who knows if we'll get back to normal? But Trudeau's on vacation, right? Why would he be in the House of Commons? He's busy. He's busy at the Weston property with $12 million fridges, just touring them. It's very, very political. That's what you do when you're a politician. You tour fridges. Okay, here's John. You don't really tour fridges. I'm just joking. Okay, CBC is reporting Tory tables sweeping reforms to Toronto police, including budget reallocation. Don't you love Toronto? I'm not going to read this story, but I think this is interesting that a mayor is able to just have sweeping reforms to the Toronto police without really asking anybody about anything. Oh, didn't you see those protests? The United States had all these protests and they wanted to defund police. So, this is what I did. Sweeping reforms to Toronto police. I wonder if he saw the machete or not the machete video, the chainsaw video from yesterday, Cherry Beach, and the MS-13 gang members who were slighted by some, unwieldy gang of people trying to use the beach, and they showed back up with chainsaws. Remember the shelter system we were talking about yesterday? Yeah, well, it's in the news today, August 11th. Today's the 12th. Or it was in the news yesterday when I was talking about it for being in the news on the 11th. Or the 10th, whatever. Man staying at Midtown shelter charged with weapons offenses. The City of Toronto says a man staying in a Midtown shelter has been arrested and charged with weapons offenses. In a release, the city says shelter staff alerted police to the alleged presence of a gun on the property at 5565 Broadview Avenue, which is a City of Toronto housing program site. The arrest was made early Tuesday morning. Well, and yesterday's article was about how nobody in the community wants to have the shelter system in there, and they weren't really asked about it. The reason it went in there was due to COVID-19, but they got a 2-year lease. We've got to house these people because of COVID-19, but it's 2 years. 2 years? Why would they do that? In a rushed decision without consulting the community. Here's another one from Alberta. A memorial is growing for a Red Deer doctor. Former co-workers and patients described Dr. Reynolds as a kind, caring man who had a huge heart. An incredibly emotional scene. Lots of tears and embraces as people lay flowers and say goodbye. Deng Maburo, 54, charged with first-degree murder along with other offenses. RCMP says fatal attack on Dr. Reynolds was targeted. Full details from the RCMP. I can't figure out why they would say that it is targeted. It says this was not a random attack, and the first-degree murder charge speaks to the premeditated nature of this incident. Now, it's premeditated in that he had a hammer. Like, you don't go somewhere carrying a hammer in case you have to nail things, unless you're like walking around a house and somebody accosts you, right? Like, but it's not often that you take a hammer with you to a doctor's appointment, right? Like, when I hammer my hand, it hurts. No, like, it doesn't work like that usually. So yeah, like, it's premeditated, but I think that it's interesting that they're saying it's targeted. I wonder if there's history between these two, or what leads them to believe that it's targeted in that way. Back to this. There were many witnesses and people who acted bravely during this assault, and we encourage anyone to reach out for support, as these incidents can be traumatic and difficult to process. Yeah, when a doctor at a walk-in clinic in a mall gets beaten to death and slaughtered with a machete, beaten to death with a hammer and slaughtered with a machete, that's disturbing. It is disturbing. It should not be happening in Canada. It didn't happen 20 years ago. It's happening now, and I think that the question why bears asking and deserves an answer. It's very, very frustrating. Here is the Ottawa Citizen reporting, safety won't be compromised for vaccine, Canada's top doctors say. I don't believe them. I don't believe Dr. Tam. I don't believe Patty Haydu. Patty, graphics designer Haydu. Why is she the health minister Haydu? I have no idea why she's the health minister. I don't believe them. I have zero faith in this team. I have zero faith in the WHO. I have zero faith that they're telling us the best advice. Zero. None. I don't believe them. I think they're liars. And there is no evidence to prove me wrong. I would love to see some evidence of them giving great advice and being right. Masks? Should we wear them? Borders? Do they work? Morons. And why, like, the fact that Trudeau and the leadership is just ignoring the fact that the public has no faith in these people is a reflection on the poor leadership we see at the federal level. And we see that reflected all across our leadership, unfortunately, in this country, from municipal to provincial, and we'll get to provincial in just a minute, Doug Ford. But yeah, we're facing a complete deficit in sane leadership. We have completely crazy people taking crazier people's advice. Oh, let's defund the police, you moron. Anyway, back to this. I live in Halton Region, says JP Lucy. It's home to some of Canada's most dedicated mask enthusiasts. Everyone and their cousin has been religiously wearing them for months. Yet the COVID-19 unit at Joseph Brant Hospital hasn't seen a single patient. I'm not surprised. And 93-bed pandemic unit has yet to see first COVID-19 patient. Wasted money. Wasted. No plan. No plan at all. This happened, and this is very strange, and this is the last story for today. I'm not going to play this. This is a guy who came up and he was angry with Catherine McKenna, and he called her some mean names, and people got upset about it. So upset that every man and their dog weighed in on it. Catherine McKenna is saying, hold on, this is out of order. Catherine McKenna is saying here, there's a CBC article, and she's saying that there's a verbal assault, cops probing invective-laced verbal assault aimed at MP Catherine McKenna. And so there's lots of people talking about this. Bill Blair is talking about this. The threats and language used against Minister McKenna and her staff in Ottawa Centre yesterday are completely unacceptable. I stand with my friend and colleague in condemning the acts of hatred in all forms. And here's Catherine McKenna, and she's got her statement. Thursday's incident was not a one-off or an isolated occurrence. My family, my staff, and I deal with abusive behavior on a regular basis. Well, I mean, it's because you're a terrible minister, Ms. McKenna. Honestly, you're very, very, very bad at your job. And people are frustrated. And so there are a lot of... I'm not saying that this profanity-laced rant is solid or a good idea. Here's Ezra Levent, and he says, verbal assault, I just checked the criminal code, and that's not a thing. Either it was an assault or it was just verbal. We have free expression in Canada, right? Like, we're allowed to say things we think, even if other people might be offended by them, even if other people don't like them. You can't say, hey, I think we should kill all of those people over there, right? Those hat-wearing people or those sweater-wearing people or T-shirt-wearing people. You can't do that. You can't incite violence against people. But you can say, I don't like you, I think you're this and that, and you're allowed to do that in Canada. We have free expression that's enshrined in our charter rights. You have the ability to think what you like and to say what you like. And there are consequences for that, maybe, but here's a point that I'm getting to. It says, just so we're clear, you can shut down major roadways and railways, endanger people's lives, possibly cause death for some. But you can't swear at an MP while asking for accountability. The world is effed. Now, I'll take it one further. You can light fires on railway tracks and jump in front of trains. You can demand defunding of police despite the obvious insanity of that demand. You can push Marxist propaganda despite the fact that Marxism has killed millions of people in history. And no pushback. But if you dare to express your frustration with profanity at somebody's office where you're probably supposed to express your frustration, and you can't, and you're not supposed to, the world has gone crazy, right? The world has gone crazy. The guy went to the cop shop in Ottawa. He said, I heard people, I heard people are asking to talk to me, and they said, yeah, we haven't heard anything about it. So, he's like, listen, like, I was upset, I was frustrated, and I maybe said some things I shouldn't have said, but I don't think I committed a verbal assault. Here's a longer interview with the guy who did it. If you're interested in that, you can check that link. Here's Peter McKay weighing in, and he says, this is abhorrent behavior that no one deserves. People who enter public service do so to serve. We will disagree passionately on occasion, but democracy and decency demand that we do it with civility and respect. Blocking people, calling them white supremacists, calling them racists, implying that not agreeing with the woke agenda, the post-woke agenda, is tantamount to being a bad person. Those are things that are happening, and the government is doing. The government is gleefully doing and still doing. And we're not allowed to express being upset by that? Well, I'm sorry, Mr. McKay. You can get lost. Not interested in your trash either. But I think that it's interesting. Swamp creatures will just come to each other's aid, right? Like, oh, I think this is bad too. Great, McKay. Why don't you join the Liberals? Why don't you try and be their leader once Justin Trudeau's punted? Oh, because that's Mark Carney's job? Right, forgot. Okay, Jason Kenny says small modular, this is the last one. Small modular reactors technology could be a game changer in developing clean, affordable baseload nuclear power with many added benefits for our energy and manufacturing industries. That's why Alberta is joining other provinces in exploring SMRs. And, I thought to myself, I should import those. I should ride this green wave. SMRs, maybe you could buy a bunch and sell them to the government and blah, 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 right? So easy money, right? Green economy, right? Whatever. Except that they don't work. Australia's been trying to do this for a long time. And this is an article from June 23rd, 2020. Renew Economy. It says small modular reactors rhetoric hits a hurdle. Small modular reactors, SMRs in Australia, have been disrupted by the Commonwealth Scientific and Industrial Research Organization, CSIRO, CSIRO, and the Australian Energy Market Operators, AMO. The latest GenCost report produced by the two agencies estimated a hopelessly uneconomic construction cost of $16,304 per kilowatt for SMRs. But it throws the nuclear lobby a bone by hypothesizing a drastic reduction in costs over the next decade. Yay, maybe in 10 years they'll be cheap. But right now, they're not cheap at all. And so there's no working prototype that's feasible to put into a neighborhood or anything to this effect. I'm interested if this is just another green energy boondoggle. I think it probably is. Like, I can't imagine. I would love to think that the technology that the government picks, right, by picking a winner, by putting the money into it, they're picking them as the winners, will work. But solar didn't work. Wind, not working. The hydroelectric maybe works a little bit better, like Quebec works, right? Like if you've got lots of falling water, you can make lots of power from that very cheaply. But like overall, if you want to just spin up a green power generating station, that's not been working. And this is maybe a more viable path to putting generators wherever and having power independent of a big power generating factory. But if it doesn't work, like, what's the pathway to overcoming this cost, right? Like the government puts in a lot of money and the production costs come down because we pay taxes to reduce it? No thanks. No thanks. I think that Planet of the Humans illustrates really, really clearly that the green energy scam is a scam and that we should probably stop spending good money after bad. Let's just invest in our oil fields and invest in maintaining Canadian oil and getting off Saudi oil. Maybe we could, have our own oil supply the eastern provinces. That would be nice, right? Rather than having to load it up on a tanker and go around through the Panama Canal. That'd be great, wouldn't it? What stupidity, right? What absolute stupidity. Instead of trying to educate the public on the absolute craziness of shipping oil around the Panama Canal, we're making steps to, double down on bad money spent on projects that don't work and are destined to just be mothballed by the next government and the next great idea, right? Oh, it sounds plausible enough. Anyway, that's enough for me today. Thanks for watching, everybody. Check out CanadaPoly.com, check out CanadaReport.co, and have a wonderful, wonderful day.